Call this meeting to order. Start with a prayer and a pledge. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for all that you do for us. Let us be your servants as we work for this city. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mrs. Kotcher is not here, so I'm taking notes and doing roll call, so please be patient with me. I'm probably going to go a little slower than normal. So roll call, Mr. Powell.
Here.
Mr. Bronner.
Here.
Mr. Bishop.
Here.
Mr. Boehner.
Here.
Mr. Tomlin.
Here.
Mrs. Kroger.
Here.
Mrs. Edichico.
Here.
7 present. We have a quorum for business and a quorum for legislation. On the agenda is approval of minutes. None. However, I did get a copy of the minutes from the last meeting. Does anyone wish to approve those minutes now, or do you want to hold them?
I'd prefer to hold off.
Same. Yeah.
Good enough. Audience participation. Is anyone in the audience desiring to please do. So I have to tell you, I'm going to do this from memory. You get 5 minutes, state your name, and current council rules say state your address too, unless council wishes to suspend that rule. Please state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
My name's Ken Wheat Martian. I live at 1660 Sanborn Drive. The last council meeting, the mayor spoke of a loan being paid off and financing a new turf field, track, and high-end equipment for the service department. With all respect to council, the mayor, and all city departments in the school district, I would like to voice my opinion on that subject. Back in 2011, 2012, a group of well-intentioned citizens advocated for the need of a new turf field, track, and lighting at Koenig Park. That didn't happen. The school was well aware of the sentiment of the citizens concerning the need for a new turf field and track at that time. 10 years later, what has the school done to obtain that for its students? On October 26, 2011, the mayor wrote a letter on Facebook regarding the stadium and other financial issues. At that time, the city spent approximately $20,000 a year maintaining the stadium and other facilities for baseball, softball, and soccer for the school use. At that same time, the Reading School was paying approximately $10,000 a year for them facilities, for the use of them facilities. Now that the Reading Road streetscape loan is paid off, the administration wants to finance a new turf field and build a track. What happened to the need for a rainy day fund? What happened to the future community center? How about a new fire, police, and administration building? How about a new swimming pool? The liner for that is 10 years old, and that's past the life expectancy of it. Isn't there a need to improve our building department and our public or property maintenance program? Wasn't the Reading Road streetscape just the first phase? Look at Reading Road south of Galbraith. I know the township and the city of Cincinnati are working on a plan to improve the west side of Reading Road. I'm sure it's going to take quite a bit more than a few $1,000s from the city of Reading to improve the east side. The streetscape on Benson Street is over 40 years old and is now in need of repairs and upgrades. We are blessed to have some fine parks in Reading. We need to provide the funds for the upkeep of these facilities. As of September 2021, the stadium fund had approximately $130,000 in it. The school presently pays $25,750 a year for the use of city facilities. I'm sure the city spends more than the $20,000 a year to upkeep these facilities than what they did in 2012. How did this fund grow so quickly? Are we spending funds on the stadium that we should be using in the parks? I know we all want the youth programs, sports programs to thrive in Reading, but a new city-owned turf field and track is not the way to make that happen. In closing, I believe it's time for the city to get out of the stadium business and use funds on other needs throughout the city. Thank you.
Excellent, Mr. Wheatmartian. Anyone on council wish to address Mr. Wheatmartian? Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Well, just a few things, Kenny. You know, first off, we applied for an NFL grant in late 2007, 2008. That's when the group approached us here at City Hall. At the time, you know, I wasn't as much worried about being able to install turf. It was be able to maintain it and replace it in a given amount of time. You know, since then, you know, we have now lost the Hilltop fields for our youth and the Roman Haas fields for our youth. We've lost them both. You know, the stadium and the track are used by a multitude of people. Again, we started talking about this 15 years ago. The usage of it is what has swayed me. You know, I'm still to this day not the biggest fan of turf, truly not, haven't been. But the fact of the matter is, and you know well, Kenny, if it rains all day Thursday, you know, nobody's on that field Thursday or Friday. You know, and if the football team happens to be on it, and we had Deer Park at home a couple years ago, there were hunks of sod coming out of it, you know, 6-inch squares and 8-inch squares. And as a matter of fact, we had to cancel games for over a week to re-sod and reseed. We're not doing this for Reading School, per se. They will be a beneficiary of it. But already, Reading Youth Football, Laughlin's turf stadium, 14, 15 years later, is worn out. They can no longer practice there. Their games are going to be in jeopardy there. As you well know, they've been out of Reading 3-4 years now, and we hated that. Don't like it. Now, you know, with turf fields, you can use them all day, every day. It's the usage and the affordability that has swayed me. We have massive improvements that need to be made, Kenny. You know, we can start south of Galbraith. We have worked with the state of Ohio, with Hamilton County, with Amberley Village, with the city of Cincinnati, with Sycamore Township to make improvements there, and improvements are well on their way. And on both sides of the street, east side and west side. You know, they're going to make it safer, they're going to light it better, have better crossings. It's going to be repaved, new curbs, new sidewalks, both sides. Now, what we have always hoped, I believe it was about the year 2004, 2005, a Home Depot Walmart was going to be built where the carousel is, where the old carousel building was. They backed out the last minute because of safety issues in that neighborhood. You know, we thought we had that conquered at that time, but we have always felt if the west side of Reading Road becomes developed down there, the east side also, the property values will go way up. So again, the Port Authority has acquired the property on the west side of Reading Road, south of Galbraith. They have the money and wherewithal to make it happen. The east side will do very well.
How?
Oh, I'm sorry.
How?
How? You know something,
What funds?
I'm sorry.
What funds on the east side? How's that going to do better?
Economic development. You know, our economic development consultant has been, and myself and our safety and service director, for over the last 15 years has been heavily involved in the improvements of Reading Road, south of Galbraith. And knowing that, you know, something, as with anything else, Kenny, one development leads to another. You know, that area has been so depressed, so downtrodden, it's been hard to get reliable businesses, you know, to acquire property there and to make improvements. We had one here within the last 4 or 5 years. We had a council member fight. But anyways, he's there now, one of the few improvements in that area. But anyway, economic development on one side, which Linda Fitzgerald's worked very hard at, will help improve her chances of economic development on the other side. Period. That's just something that's well known in economic development. So, and our financial commitment to that already down there has been all of $7,000 for the improvements. You know, we started complaining about Sunnybrook Drive and really just south of Galbraith. But once the state come down and started taking care of Sunnybrook Drive, the curbs were gone, flat out gone in that area. No sidewalks on that side of the street. It really spurred the state to take action there. But anyway, the usage of our ball fields, you know, when I became mayor, Voorhees Park was trash. You know, we've totally redone Voorhees Park. We've done playground equipment improvements everywhere. Voorhees, new restroom in Voorhees, Hilltop Park, Observatory Park, Koenig Park. We've been working left and right. The new pool liner I didn't think was that old, and I don't think it's anywhere near wearing out. We are worried about getting the structure of the pool checked out, because that is how many years old now? Goodness gracious, 40, 42, 43?
Well, the life expectancy, they said, they say 10 years on that when we put it in, because they weren't sure how long it would last after that.
Well, to my knowledge, Matt Morgan says it's in great shape, and I have not heard, you're the first that's telling me that that's winding down.
Well,
I have not heard that from
I'm saying
anybody.
from the time they put it in, they said we can only say 10 years because we don't know how long it's going to last after that. That's why I said the life expectancy was
Okay.
10 years.
To my knowledge, we're good to go there. But
Good.
the pool, you're absolutely right. But anyway, the money now from the retirement of Reading Road Streetscape and other things we retired, you know, the stadium and track are used by a lot of people. You know, soccer is without a home. You know, we've lost our soccer practice fields. Even Reading High School last year was in Evendale for their practices. Nowhere to go. So anyway, Kenny, it's the loss of Roman Haas, the loss of Hilltop, and the fact that you can play on turf all day, every day. Laughlin's turf, like I say, the president of Little League Football approached me 3-4 months ago looking for storage space, as a matter of fact, because Laughlin told them to get their equipment out of the stadium over there. They're going to be homeless. So, you know, what's that? 250 boys and girls?
How many of them 250 are from Reading?
You know, so, Kenny, you know something, I don't know. I imagine quite a few of them. I'll
I'm
get
sure
with
there's
Andrew
quite a few,
Carpenter.
but, yeah.
I talked to him. We'd like to keep the youth, you know, active and busy. You know, childhood obesity is going to cost us all more than anything else I can think of coming in the future. So every time we get a chance to get kids into basketball, softball, football, soccer, cheerleading.
Doesn't the city maintain the fields down at Our Lady of the Valley?
No, we have not for quite some time, and that property has been leased, and to my
We don't use
knowledge,
that for VYO baseball?
well, I don't think we've used Sacred Heart in quite some time.
No, Our Lady of the Valley.
Oh, down at St. Peter and Paul?
Yeah.
I think Bonnie still uses that. I still call it St. Pete's Field.
Okay, but
I'm
we
so
still,
sorry.
the city does still cut the grass and maintain the fields.
For youth?
Yes.
For youth athletics.
So we got
Absolutely.
those fields. So we lost Roman Haas fields. We still got Bemis fields for baseball, don't we? And for soccer?
They for baseball.
And soccer?
But believe it or not, soccer and baseball fight left and right. Kenny, there's the usage. We'll sit down and talk about that. I didn't come here prepared to in depth with you, but hey, anytime you
Yeah.
want to come here,
'Cause
call
I
us.
mean,
and-
I'm all for a turf field, but I don't think the city should spend our tax monies on that. I would like to help the school, you know, any way I can so they can have a turf field. Again, with the track. We don't need a track for the city, the school needs a track.
Okay, this is my 22nd year. I think already I have sat down with at least 4, if not 5 superintendents and said, from my opinion, and this remains my opinion, I'd love to give them the stadium, flat out give it to them. It's really financially an anchor to us. And as the mayor of the city and born a Reading Blue Devil, athletics aren't on my, public safety. 24/7 police department, fire EMS department, public works
I've heard
department,
that-
that we take very good care of, by the way.
We've heard that forever, and I agree with you on
Yeah.
that. But we've got other facilities in the parks and recreation that needs to be taken care of besides the stadium with turf.
Well, hey,
for the
we
school.
have a long list
What
of
has
them.
the school done to provide that turf for the field?
What has the school done for it? You know something, again, Kenny, we're doing this more for the youth of this city than for Reading schools. And Reading schools will be asked to pay more in time. They have their financial challenges now.
Yes.
They're one of the few, they have never had it a part of their budget. Quite honestly, I was in hopes that they might be able to add it, to this levy request and take over the stadium financially. But as everybody well knows, they're asking for a maximum amount now. And you don't want to be the straw to,
Hate to interrupt. I need to put you on pause. We're at 5 minutes for both.
Okay.
Okay.
But
Awesome.
council, if
Call
you
anytime.
wish, council, you can ask for an extension of time for this discussion.
I just have one comment too, Mr. Weemarsh, and I would beg to differ that the track is just used for the school. I would guarantee,
Do we need a running track for the citizens?
I would guarantee that there are more citizens that use that track than the school would use.
Don't we have the walking trail that the city has furnished or paid for?
We do.
How about just lapping that around Koenig Park for our track for the citizens and having people use our park?
That's an option too, but I know that there are people that enjoy the track. They enjoy running on the track. They enjoy, well, not anymore, but walking on the track so that they know exactly how much they're walking. There are people down there every day, all day.
I prefer the walking trail myself, but again, you got the track, but you kind of know how much you're going to walk by time or whatever. That's, okay. I'm not going to argue with it. I just don't think it's a need for the city. Maybe the school, but not the city.
Any other council members wish to address this? Next up, please state your name.
It's Brian Collins, 1313 Mockingbird Lane.
Wait, how do you spell your last name?
Collins, C-O-L-L-I-N-S.
I heard Hans, sorry.
So that's okay.
1313?
Mockingbird Lane.
Mockingbird.
I have a question. So the school developed Hilltop, and the mayor said we lost that. Are we allowed to use Hilltop as citizens?
There are not as many fields there. You know, there used to be, at least 3 Little League ball diamonds there. Now, you know, by time varsity and reserves use that, and I don't know where, I asked Bonnie here recently, she hasn't sat down and talked with the superintendent on usage up there, but pretty much of that daylight hours are going to be taken there, and there's no lights. Now, you know, Bonnie, a lot of times varsity games down Koenig Park would end at 6:30, 7 o'clock. If it weren't for lights, there would have been no VYO practices down there. So anyway,
So if the school's not using it, citizens can go up there and use it and do what they want, correct?
I'm sorry, that's school property, Brian. I'm not in control of that. You'd have to
Okay.
ask that at a school board meeting.
Okay, so then we're going to improve property for the school, but the school improved property, but not all citizens can use it.
We're improving the property for everyone in this community, mainly the youth.
Okay. A retired school teacher told me that there's only 2 stadiums in the state of Ohio that a city owns. So I agree with Mr. Wheatmarsh, and I don't think we need to be in the stadium business. There's obvious a reason why no one else is. And the other thing I think council needs to take into consideration is our economy is horrible. You can see inflation. There's talking about a recession, and who knows what's going to happen in the future. I think the last thing we need to do is go into more debt over something that, in my opinion, the school should be taking care of and not us. Give it to the school. You said you want to give it to them. Just tell them it's theirs. If they don't want to accept it, that's not our problem.
Well, I've had a little bit of battle with council with that. I just stated it again. I'm wide open. I give it to them.
Then council, I think that's something you guys need to look at. Let's just break it off now, give it to the school, and then let them do grants and let the NFL help out. I don't think they can do that because the city owned it before, but with the school owning it, I think that opens up a whole plethora of opportunities to improve that with grants and NFL and things like that. I don't know the whole process of that, but I don't think you can do it if a city owns the property. They're not going to give you grant money and things like that. The NFL is not going to do it if the city owns it. So now is the time I think council should really look into maybe possibly giving it to the school and wipe our hands of it. Maybe give them some of the money that we took from them from rent to give them a starter. I don't have a problem with that. But I think going into more debt with uncertain times is something we don't need to do.
Well, just, again, if I can respond, late 1940s, that was a fireworks factory. The Kiwanis in the city of Reading raised money, purchased it. The fireworks company had gone out of business. Volunteers, including Reading High School students, my uncle being one of them, prepared those fields, Centennial Field. We were incorporated in 1851, 1951. They gave it to the city, ready to be played for football, soccer, and other sports, and the agreement was then that the city would maintain it forever for youth sports and for sports. Now, and again, I'll tell you this, the chances of us being able to give that property to the school right now, knowing that they would need $2, $3, $4 million worth of improvements, and they're already extremely financially challenged, because I'll tell you this, the last thing anybody wants to do, and our Reading schools don't like to ask hardworking people for any more of their money. No one likes to do that. They're in deep financial trouble. They should have run this levy 4 or 5 years ago. They've seen it coming. Due to COVID, it's been put off, and now it's a downright necessity. And if it fails, there will be major cuts at our school. They would not accept a stadium right now. They wouldn't financially be able to take the gift knowing that they'd have to put $2, $3, $4 million into it. So
Yeah, I feel bad for them, but like you said, they should have looked a long time ago, and it's 2022. So if we need to cut the cord, let's cut the cord now. Now is the time to do it, and, let them see what they can do.
I don't think it, Brian, if I could go back in time in the city ranch, one of the things I'd change, I'd beg the Kiwanis, give it to the schools, please.
Right.
I would. I'd flat out beg them. Because again, sports are nowhere near the top of our agenda here.
Does the council have the ability to give it to them?
They don't have to accept it.
They don't have to accept it.
Oh, they don't? Okay.
No, with any public agency, people give property, people dedicate streets. It's not an obligation on the public entity to accept it.
Right. Okay. Well, like I said, I just don't think we need to go into more debt with these untying times, in front of us. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? And, unfortunately, this world is a crazy world, and for something like this, I think, again, with Mr. Wheatmarsh, that there's other money we can spend things on if that's what we really want to do than for, that stadium. And last thing too, most of the people that own the stadiums, they don't allow just anybody to go on that field. It's not like people can just go on that football field. They don't allow it. So saying that it's for the citizens and the youth, it's not. I guarantee you that if I wanted to go there with my kids, because I've been run off the field as a grass field from city workers saying I can't play on it, that even with it's a turf field, saying it's for everybody, that's not true.
Well, the youth.
Because just like Hilltop's not for everybody now because the school improved it and it's their field now. That's all. I appreciate everyone. Thank you.
You ran out the clock. Very good. You did have a minute left on the clock, Mr. Wheatmarsh, and if you'd like to loop back and get that.
Back in 2012 or so, when this issue came up with the schools about trying to get a turf field, the superintendent at that time said there's no way the school would put up any money to repair or replace that field or the track. The only way you'll see money coming from the school, and this is coming from the superintendent at the time, is for the city to lock the gates. And then we'll see how fast the school will come up with some money.
I don't recall that. They put up $100,000 for the track in 2001, and the agreement is
Well,
with the city and the school.
2012.
2012? I don't even.
2011 or so, well, you were in a meeting. I was there too.
Yeah, 2007, 2008 is when the turf field first hit City Hall here. I still have the NFL grant application that we
long ago?
started. It was that
Okay.
long ago. Yeah, it was. Time
At
flies.
the time when the track coach was in here complaining about the track and said it was unsafe for her kids, the superintendent said, are they that unsafe, we should not allow our kids to play on that track. And later on the same meeting, the superintendent says, look, if you want the school to come off of money, the only way you can get the school to come off of money is for the city to put locks on that gate and kick us out.
Well, I'm sorry.
You were there.
Okay. I flat out don't remember that one. Flat out.
All right. Another, please state your name.
Bob Ashbrook, 221 Walnut Street, Reading, Ohio. I'd like to address council this evening on 3 matters. Unfortunately, with the time limitations, I'm going to concentrate on the last of these 3 that I'll describe. First would be the safe routes to school that was mentioned a couple weeks ago. Second would be on the DORA. And the third is this issue of turf at the stadium. And since each of these would take far more than 5 minutes to flesh out any kind of a worthwhile discussion, those first 2 will save for a different time. Hopefully when council can make some upgrades to the technology within the council chambers that would allow ease of presentations from computers, both by guests and council members and by citizens. We all know that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and since a previous council passed enabling legislation to spend the money to make those technological improvements, I would urge this council to pursue that.
They're on their way, by the way. Ordered and on their way.
Do we know what?
Well, you know something?
Never mind.
Yeah, hey, beforehand, call, and I'll get with Todd Owens again. You know I'm not the
Sure.
technology person. Being worked on, and I believe things are ordered, and improvements will
Well,
come soon.
Actually, I think it was going to be council's determination on all that, but that's another topic that's also
We go to
for a later
experts with
time
that,
down
Bob.
there.
Sorry about
Sure.
that.
So in any event, at least 10 years ago, this concern about a loss of athletic facilities was well known within the community. It was at about that time that the operation at PMC had completely wound up, and a couple of brothers had acquired the property, and it was clear that they were intending to redevelop it in its entirety, and that the fields that they had made available for public use would be going away. Shortly thereafter, in around 2014, I presented to council a little presentation regarding shortcomings at Koenig Park. And it was intended as a conversation starter so that the community could rally around the need for recreational improvements. All of those stakeholders would have the opportunity to speak to their needs. Priorities could be established and so forth. Precious little happened beyond that. Then in 2014, in 2015, when the school district floated their levy, their bond issue for building the new school, there was the potential in many people's minds for an expansion of recreational opportunities at the Hilltop site. And I say this because of information that they printed in their bond issue campaign literature under the Blue Devil seal, frequently asked questions on the bond issue. And one of those frequently asked questions was, what happens to the current sites? In this bond issue levy information, they specifically said, and I'll quote, "The state has determined that the building should be demolished and has included a budget for demolition in its funding. The district has agreed that the land at Hilltop will go to the city of Reading, and the district will work with city leaders and a development committee to make the best use for the central property." Well, as we all know, that hasn't happened. So I suppose that when it comes to campaign literature, you take what's printed with a grain of salt, and in as much as there is a levy going on right now, that might be good advice for all. Beyond that, I feel like many of us were snookered. The fact that there was no public athletic facility on the Hilltop, save for those fields that were at the Hilltop property, it appeared that there was an opportunity to upgrade that and make within walking distance of a large populace of our community a more expanded public recreational site. Since then, the district has taken $940,000 or so of borrowed money that they're paying $160,000 a year to retire out of their general fund, the fund that otherwise pays teachers. They're taking $160,000 plus $40,000 for maintaining that, and that doesn't include their water bill or electricity. Now, in order to make that construction possible, they passed a resolution in July of 2019 because they were essentially going to be in default with their lender on the money they borrowed on that property when they tore the buildings down.
5 seconds.
So anyway, the school has promised in a resolution passed in July of 2019 that they were going to make an additional $1 million in improvements at that Hilltop site.
Bob, I hate to cut you off. You're at your time. That's up to council.
I'll make a motion to give Bob another 5 minutes.
Hey, this sounds like a school board issue, though.
No, it's a recreation issue, because we're talking about spending city dollars to upgrade the stadium when the real issue is a lack of land for fields. Putting turf on there doesn't do anything other than allow more people to jam into the same facility.
Okay.
Okay, Bob.
Hold on, wait, hold on. We have a motion on the floor. We had an objection by Mrs. Edichico, which is valid, and we had an explanation by Mr. Ashbrook. Is there a second
I'll
to the
second it.
motion? Second by Mr. Tomlin. I think I'm gonna do this by roll call. Roll call, so Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Bronner,
No.
Mr. Bishop,
Yes.
Mr. Boehner,
Yes.
Mr. Tomlin,
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger,
No.
Mrs. Edichico.
No.
We have 4 yes, 3 no. The motion carries. Mr. Ashbrook, please proceed.
So they've gone ahead and essentially taking out of public use a significant amount of what is really a public asset by essentially privatizing it for the use of perhaps 30 to 40 student athletes. My guess is that that's how many would be involved in baseball and softball at the high school. If they have this extra $1 million, and I've made a public records request of them to determine where they intended to receive this extra $1 million, and while they have been very responsive to the other requests that I have made, they have not been able to provide this information. Now, in fairness, there's a new treasurer who is the keeper of public records for the district, and it may very well be that there is no document. It may be that they simply wish that they would find some $1 million. Maybe they're going to get the $1 million out of the proceeds from the levy. I don't know.
But Bob, you should be going to the
Hold on,
school
hold
board
on.
with this because you're making allegations here with no one here to answer.
I'm not making an allegation. I'm
Yes, you
reading
are.
a
They didn't have to find $1 million
You're out of order. Mr. Ashbrook is speaking.
inaccurately.
He's allowed to speak inaccurately.
There you
He's
go.
responsible for his own words.
So in any event, I think that rather than spending $1 million, $750,000, whatever it would happen to be for the turf, it's time to press the pause button and truly look for more comprehensive solutions to our long-term recreational needs in the city. Mr. Wheatmartian mentioned numerous concerns regarding the pool. And as a member of council for 16 years, I heard these from constituents as well. The notion that, well, we need a splash pad at the pool. We need a slide at the pool. All these amenities that other communities provide that we've never been able to afford. And so if we're, again, going to be borrowing money for recreational improvements, we need to take a broader look. It's been mentioned by several others that the district has, and its supporters have frequently stated that if we own the stadium, we could get this NFL grant and get the turf with someone else's money. That's the approach that ought to be pursued. The notion that the school district would not be interested in acquiring the stadium, I suspect they wouldn't, as long as they've got a sweetheart deal that they have right now. So to Ken's point, if you locked it up, maybe they would suddenly become a little bit more agreeable to come to the table. About 4 years ago, Councilman Gertz specifically asked Chuck Lofato, we need to talk to you about these recreational needs coming up in the stadium and so on and so forth. And his response was, we don't have time. We're building a school. We don't have time. Well, the school's built. It's time to have a conversation that is community-based, not narrowly defined and happening within a very closed group of people. This issue impacts so many parts of community life that it warrants a thorough public discussion. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Ashbrook. Council, any thoughts, reaction? No?
Well, nothing's been brought before council at this point, so I don't object to the thorough discussion. Never hurts anything.
Sorry, taking notes. All right. Any other members of the community wish to speak to council tonight? Okay. I see no other hands. So we have for guest speakers, Jessica Miranda. Please step to the microphone.
Good evening.
That thing, you may have to adjust that for yourself so you can be heard.
How's that?
I can hear you fine, but if you want to pull it out of the stand so you can hold it, that's
Okay.
fine too.
I'll just hover closely. Hopefully you can hear me well. If not, let me know and I'll adjust it. I have handouts here, so I'm going to start them here with you if you wouldn't mind taking one and passing them. So I am coming to see you in my capacity as your state representative to do a quick State House update of what's going on in your state government, and more importantly, to speak to you about House Bill 361, which is what you have coming before you, which is a bipartisan piece of legislation that we are working on for you in the State House. This legislation has to do with railroads and blocked crossings. As I'm sure you all have seen the recent stories and have heard the stories decade after decade after decade of this happening, particularly Reading is one of those cities that gets bombarded with the traffic at all of these stopped crossings by these trains that are at, you know, a much, much larger length and longer length that they used to be back in the good old days, I'll say. So 361 is a piece of legislation that kind of tries to gain accountability and transparency for the railroad companies to have to report each time a crossing is blocked for 5 minutes or longer, why that specific crossing was blocked, and it has to be reported to the PUCO, which is the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. Also, what this does, this legislation gives it a bit more teeth, so to speak, because it says that PUCO then needs to turn around all of those annual reports and give that report to your state legislature, so those of us in the State House and the State Senate. That way, we can hold the railroad companies accountable for all of these stops at these crossings that are causing havoc for not only our local governments, but for our citizens, and most importantly, for our first responders. I still have the picture saved in my phone. I'm sure a lot of you saw it, of the house that just burnt over here in Lockland. And unfortunately, the entire thing was engulfed in flames and burnt because the first responders were blocked by a train and could not get through to take care of that family's home. So my younger sister is a dispatcher for Hamilton County, so I hear about all of these stories all of the time. So when the opportunity came up to work on this legislation and to make it a bipartisan piece of legislation, I of course jumped at that opportunity, and my joint sponsor is Representative Thomas Hall, who is right across our county border here in Butler County. He represents Liberty Township and other portions of Butler County. And they too have their fair share of issues up there in Liberty Township and other portions of Butler County with stopped crossings. So, any questions? What I've given you, just so you know, in front of you is the bill analysis, which is done by the Legislative Services Commission. This tells you the summary of the bill, the detailed analysis, and what the violations would be to the rail companies for these specific stops and at the crossings. So other than that, I am sure you have seen all of the other joyous chaos that is happening in the State House. We still don't have a map, so we all still do not know where we're running. So your guess is as good as mine, but the good news is the Great 28 has remained the same as it currently stands today in the last 3 iterations of the maps that have been struck down. So if that's any consolation, hopefully our fine district will stay the way that it is. Other than that, we have passed all 3 budgets this year, miraculously. Not late this time around in this General Assembly, and we are trucking along as we figure out what to do with a second primary election, among other things. So I am open for questions and just very, very happy to be here with you tonight, and of course, proud to work for you in our state capitol.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Miranda. Mr. Powell.
Thank you for coming, Representative Miranda. I actually spoke about block crossings at our last meeting as part of my committee report, and noticed under your comment that you or somebody acknowledges that it's likely to not even be enforceable. So is this, you say it has teeth to it, but it sounds like you're going to run into the same issue that everybody else has, that this isn't enforceable. Who would enforce it at the state level, and where do those fines go? Do they come back to the communities?
The fines would go to PUCO, the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, and those, I would assume, would get put into their budget, and I can find out the detailed analysis of what those could be used for and if those could come back to the communities, because I do really like that idea. We all know that local government funds have been cut to the tune of 50% over the last decade. So our cities, villages, and townships truly could use those funds. And I would take an imagine and a guess that there would be a lot in terms of that pool of funds for all of these violations we see across the state of Ohio, time and time again from these railroad companies. So I will find out on that. To your point of the last page regarding the federal decision, this is in here just as a side note, a comment. It could not be struck down and not be enforceable. We wrote this bill in such a way to kind of put as much teeth into it as we could in going through the PUCO board, as opposed to anything else, so that we can try to ensure that it can not only be enforced, but that there can be the kind of accountability and transparency needed from the state legislature in both the House and the Senate chambers.
Just knowing how big railroads are, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up.
Right.
In all seriousness about that. Another thing that, probably would be an even better alternative is instead of having at-grade crossings, because the railroads now are doing something, and I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but it's called precision railroading, where instead of stockpiling cars in yards and sorting, they're trying to make the trains as long as possible and taking them direct through.
Right.
They're utilizing what are known as DPUs, which is like another locomotive in the middle of the train, and the trains are getting longer and longer as a result of this. And railroads, I believe in I think I read something that they are down like 19,000 employees. So as a function of that everybody's seeing as far as lack of employees, that railroads are needing this to, at least that's what they're saying. So, kind of the stuff you're up against, but, I don't know. I hope what you're saying is that it can happen, but I'm not going to hold my breath because I know how big the railroads are. The other thing I would like to ask you, restoration of local government funds. Has any work been proposed on that?
So I'm going to take the first one first.
Okay.
I appreciate those comments, Councilman Powell. Those all are valid, all of your comments. I have actually been to tour our local railroad here because that lobbyist is highly involved at the state level on this bill and many others, because we do have other pieces of legislation in terms of a two-man crew, proper lighting in railroad yards, just to name a few, that aim to fix these issues. And we realize we're up against these very big corporations, but listen, it matters a lot to our local governments, to all of you, to all of us as citizens, and most importantly, to our first responders who are trying to get to the place they need to get to save lives and are getting repeatedly stopped by these trains, of which you pointed out are miles longer than they
Right.
used to be, which goes back to the importance of a two-man crew as well. So all of that to say, I appreciate your comments. We're working on those things. This is why I'm here tonight, to implore all of you to contact the chairman, which is Chairman Baldridge of our Transportation and Public Safety Committee. We have had one hearing on this bill. We need many, many more so that folks like you, the City of Reading, and many others can come up and testify on this bill and the importance of it. So if you wouldn't mind helping me help you and contact the chairman and ask for more hearings, that would be fantastic, because then we can get to talk about all of those comments that you just made. The second question for the restoration of the local government funds, this is very much so my top priority, and I think your mayor knows this. Back in my first year in office in 2019, we did a mayoral roundtable with all of my mayors, and that is the number one thing we talked about, was it not, Mayor Bemis?
Absolutely.
We understand that the percentage that goes to the local government fund in the state operating budget is non-sufficient. And I will say that in front of any crowd, anywhere that I go, and I can explain why that is. And it is because it has been completely and utterly assaulted over the last 10, 12, 13 years. Every year, every biennium that we do the budget, we are always pushing for more of a percentage. And to give folks who maybe aren't aware, the percentage that goes to our local government fund is actually less than the percentage that goes to the public library fund. Not that I don't love public libraries, because I do. My daughter was here earlier, and I take her to the library all the time, so we love our libraries. But just to put that into perspective, show me your budget, I'll show you your priorities, right? Local government funds should be funded to what they were over a decade ago, and we are fighting very, very hard on that, as well as other things that affect that as well, like the homestead exemption for seniors' property taxes and things like that. We have bills for all of these things. The unfortunate piece is we can't get them moved and we can't get hearings for them. So contact my office, please. My card is on the paper that I just handed out to you, and we can give you a list of all of the bills that aim to fix that and to restore the local government fund. That way you can help me advocate on those as well.
One other thing, if you have a minute.
Yeah.
Just kind of thinking of, the railroads are they're too big to fight. I hate to say it, but I feel they're too big to fight. So I think maybe the more wise thing, instead of trying to find them, let's work to find alternatives to at-grade crossings. A perfect example would be our, I call it Shepherd Road, but where Benson Street turns into Smalley, that would be a great opportunity for an overhead crossing there. And it would also, if we could figure out a way to bring it into our industrial side as well, have a connection to that as well, that would help us out a lot as well. We have a Port Authority has taken over an old Dow chemical site, looking to redevelop it, and we have truck traffic going through a neighborhood of ours, and could use the assistance to try and come up with a workable solution for everybody to get that truck traffic off the residential street and to get them better access to Interstate 75. So any help you guys can provide with that, I'm sure it all comes down to funding, but any consideration we would definitely appreciate.
Yes, and if I may just respond really quickly, I agree again with all of those comments. I've toured our local rail yard here and spoke with them and all of the guys who work down there as well, and they agree too. And I don't want to fight them, right? We don't want to fight the railroad companies. We want them to do the right thing, which is work with our local governments to create what they call those easements, or those, going above grade or below grade to get it out of the regular flow of traffic. And I'm hopeful. I'm still looking into this. My office is still gathering information on this, but I'm hopeful that the state legislature and therefore the controlling board and the administration can also do the right thing in allocating some of those infrastructure bill dollars, those federal dollars, down to where it needs to go here in our local governments, so that you can prepare and fund those opportunities to get the stopped crossings out of the way for your constituencies.
Great. Thank you.
Anybody else on council?
Anything at all. It, of course, does not have to just be the railroad bill. I know
I do
there's.
appreciate how quickly your office gets back to all inquiries.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for coming
you.
tonight.
I appreciate that feedback, and I don't like apologizing for my colleagues or the body as a whole, but I know House Bill 157 is really hurting my local governments right now. I know Reading might not be as much impacted as places like the village of Evendale are, or the city of Springdale, but that municipal tax bill is something that I'm keeping my eye on, because that is going to need quite a few fixes over the next couple years in order to maintain, again, the local government funds that you all need to do your job here on your local council and in your local government.
Thank
So
you.
I apologize, but we fought really hard against that. We wish we could have stopped it, but.
Anything further? Thank you, Ms. Miranda, for coming.
All right, thank you. And you all
Good
have my
information.
card, so open door policy. Thank you, Councilman Thaman, for saying that. Anytime you need me, give me a holler. You all have my contact information. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for guest speakers unless somebody else has a guest speaker. No? Okay. Executive session, none scheduled. Any need for one? Seeing none. Moving on to legislative session, reading of resolutions. I don't have any resolutions to read. Does anyone? Seeing none. Moving on, reading of ordinances. Now, in the email that I got today, it may be older than that, somebody was holding off on these. Is that correct, or are we reading them?
No, we're holding off on the service department.
Your budget
But
has to
these
be
are different.
passed
Yeah,
today.
these need to be,
Okay, so which one are we not reading, number 1 or number 2?
Reading both number 1 and number 2.
Yes.
Reading both?
Yes.
Okay.
Read both of them.
Okay, so, and are these, we'll find out. Okay, so the first one I have is an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Reading, state of Ohio, during the period ending December 31st, 2022. That's the third reading.
Move to adopt.
So we have
Second.
a little too slow, almost got it. It was Mr. Boehner and Mr. Powell. Let's see, we're gonna do a roll call vote because it is an ordinance. Actually, it's a roll call to move to adopt. So,
It's an adoption order.
adoption ordinance, okay. So, Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Bronner,
Yes.
Mr. Bishop,
Yes.
Mr. Boehner. I think that's a
Yes.
yes. Okay. Mr. Tomlin,
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger,
Yes.
and Mrs. Edichico.
yes.
We have 7 yes. The ordinance is adopted. I don't have the ordinance number for you at this point.
I believe Carla said that would be 11.
We're gonna call it 2022-11 for right now until I get clarification.
Yes, it would be, yeah, starting at 11.
Okay, dokie, thank you. Number 2, an ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a contract with Software Solutions for the purpose of replacing the city's finance and payroll software for an amount not to exceed $190,000 and declaring an emergency.
Quick question.
Go
That was coming out of the COVID relief funds?
I don't have that answer.
That was in the email, yes. That was in the email.
Okay.
Okay. I had to blow through a whole pile of email tonight.
I'll make a motion, we suspend the rules requiring the second, third reading, because I think it's the first reading of this one, isn't it?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion to suspend and a second by Mr. Boehner and a second by Mr. Tomlin. This is, since it's an ordinance, I'm gonna call roll. So, Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Bronner,
Yes.
Mr. Bishop,
Yes.
Mr. Boehner,
Yes.
Mr. Tomlin,
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
Okay, so the rules are suspended.
Motion to adopt?
Move to adopt by Mrs. Edichico.
Second.
Oh, that was close. I think that went to Mr. Bishop. Again, roll call, Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Bronner,
Yes.
Mr. Bishop,
Yes.
Mr. Boehner,
Yes.
Mr. Tomlin,
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
So we have 7 yes. The ordinance is adopted. And so it's going to be 2022-12, pending correction on that one.
No, that's what she said here,
Okay.
2020-11 and 2020-12.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I don't have that in front of me. I ran out of paper. I can only print a certain amount. Thank you.
I hear you.
All righty. Next item is miscellaneous business. Any miscellaneous business? Starting with Ms. Edichico, I saw her hand first.
Just real quick, I had sent out some, the updated rules and regulations for council procedures, striking audience members having to list their address when they get up to speak, and just making some clarifications on some duties. And I was hoping we could vote on updating these tonight.
What's the purpose of eliminating the address?
There was some questions. I know the last meeting, a gentleman actually got up and asked why it was required, and I've been looking into it, and I don't see anything in any codes that states that it is required. It's really the preference of the municipality is what I found.
Do we have any, if we suspend that, do we have any proof that they're actually a resident?
No, we can have them where they register with Carla before speaking, but they don't have to state it publicly. I know some people are uncomfortable stating it publicly. I understand that, it is a public meeting. They might not want their address out there.
Well, Mr. Collins tonight gave a false address anyway, so.
Right. So,
Well, I think, and Bob, I think it's a valid point. If they're invited to speak, I don't know that they have to give their real address, and in this day and age, I think it's probably wise that they don't. Before he left, I would have had him say hello to Fred and Lily, but.
You know, if somebody does come up and want to complain about their neighbor, they may not want to put their address out there for everybody to see it.
Right.
right.
Further discussion on this?
I'll bring up the other part of it, that I think it's a little, a bit much to take away the president of council's prerequisite and ability to ask questions. But if that's what they want, that's what they want. I'm not in favor of it at all.
No, I don't think it doesn't take away ability to ask questions. So he's more than welcome to do so. It's really just clarifies if, any communications are received, they go to Carla and they come to council before the meeting.
I wouldn't mind some more time on it.
Yeah, that's fine.
A second reading. It's just the second time already this year that we've addressed this. So I'd like to be thorough and hopefully not have to revisit it again.
So everybody has a copy? I got it in my email. Did everybody else get it?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr.
Any other
President, I've got one other thing. I talked to the Service Committee tonight. We're going to meet next Tuesday at 7:30 to go to the two ordinances. Dave is in the process of looking at them because it's considered a reserve account, so the format must be changed a bit from what I used.
What's the date on that?
The 26th, next Tuesday at 7:30.
Tuesday, 4/26?
Yes, at 7:30.
7:30 PM here?
Yes, here.
Okay.
I'll contact the Chief of Public Works and his two top right-hand people, so that all three of them will be here to answer anybody's questions.
Okay. Mr. Tomlin?
I'd just like to remind everyone that Saturday is the Reading Litter Cleanup Day. We'll meet either at St. Peter and Paul Cemetery or the small shelter Koenig Park. We'll go from 10 to noon. This is in conjunction with the Walk with a Purpose and the We Thrive organizations. Hope to see you there.
And lunch afterwards, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just looking for other counsel. Mr. Bishop, you've had that grin on your face all evening.
I'm listening intently.
Okay. You sure you have nothing? And now's the time. Okay. Any other counsel? Okay. That's it. We're looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Banner, second by Mr. Bronner. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.